especially First Bank of Atlanta gave that money, that grant money come in and whatnot, it'd be a good time to actually start marketing. And we have someone here that can, you know, tweak it for you and whatnot. You know, so it's a good time, proper time for her to be here with the market open back up, with the grant money just being released and whatnot. Of course, she probably have exposed to a lot more. At the end of the session and whatnot, then we're going to let our office manager take over, and we're going to hopefully they go over, actually put some ads or something together to put out today about what we learned about and whatnot. So we want to really act on what we're learning and whatnot instead of going to a seminar and putting the book on the shelf when you leave here. We want to be able to do something about it before we leave. So we won't be having the same conversation next month and so forth and so on. All right, so without further ado, and I got to make another appointment, I'll hand over to Ms. Parker.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for letting me come in and talk to you about the first-time homebuyer programs that we have for here at Wells Fargo. First-time homebuyers are a very important part of our business. The market is opening up, much like Johnny said. The market's opening up. Interest rates are very, very low. This is a great time to get in and talk to the first-time home buyers, and because they are really big. It's a huge group. Most of the homes are being purchased by first-time home buyers. A lot of first-time home buyers out there. So it would be beneficial for us to get in front of those folks as quickly as possible. They are an important part of our housing recovery. They're a great source of business for you guys. They're eager for your knowledge. They're green. They don't know anything about the home buying process, so it's just very, very important to make sure that you're giving them as much information and staying in contact with them as best you can. They're free from contingency. They don't have to sell a house. We don't have to wait until this house is sold for you to start writing a contract on a new house. And they're ready to become home buyers. They're excited. You know, like I said, interest rates are low, housing prices are low, and let's face it, we know inventory is already up. First-time home buyers are like diamonds in the rough. If we mold them and create a very savvy, knowledgeable buyer, at closing, after closing, if you touch them however many times, I think they say 30, 40 times a year with just mailers, emails, and things like that. And after you close them, they're excited, they remember you, you stay in contact with them, not only because you created this knowledgeable buyer, but you also saved them $15,000 in the process. I mean, who wouldn't love you? So let's talk about the first-time home buyer programs. Let's look at the first, I have a handout here, the second page of that. I just want to go over a brief scenario to show you some of the benefits of using down payment assistance. Aside from just saving a lot of money. The first example is standard FHA fixed loan, $200,000 sale price. And the down payment, for this example, FHA, 3.5% down payment. Closing costs, I'm estimating about $8,000. 3.5% is $7,000 down payment. So tentatively, they're bringing $15,000 cash to close. Same scenario, but let's talk about DAP and then seller assistance. Same scenario, $200,000 sale price, 3.5% down payment, and seller assistance, as you know, 6% is allowed for sellers. In here now, I see no higher than 3, but and actually it's moving to 3 very, very soon with the new changes in the laws. So right now we're at 6%. In this scenario, they're getting the sellers are willing to give the whole 6, which is $12,000. The DAP, and I'll talk about this particular DAP later on. The down payment assistance, the DAP is $11,000. So closing, going back to that same scenario, $8,000 in closing cost, and that's the prepays and all those things. $7,000 down payment. They're looking at $15,000 down. Now let's back out the seller assistance. So we have $12,000 seller assistance, $11,000 DAP. We have a negative $8,000 on the table. Do we like to leave money on the table? I don't. So now here's where, and all of this is really done prior to your contract being signed. So we look at $8,000 being left on the table. We go back into the transaction and look at negotiating the seller help. So we don't need the whole 6% now. We only need maybe 4%. Okay? So let's go to the next page. This That's just a little example right there. So let's say it's $2,000 sale price, $200,000 sale price. Down payment assistance is 3.5%, $7,000. So we just negotiated with the seller, so we don't need the whole 6, so we're asking for 4%, which is $8,000. The DAP is $11,000. Now we still have some money left on the table. Before we had the sellers bringing 12, they're now bringing 8. We still have about $4,000 left on the table. So now I go back to my loan and I structure the loan so that I buy the rate down using 2%, using $4,000. That difference, that $4,000, and I'm buying the rate down for the buyer. So they're excited again. You know, at first it was 4.25. Now it's 3.5 or something like that. I may be exaggerating with that difference, but you understand my point. So the reality is their rate's lower. So same scenario, $8,000 closing cost. The down payment, $7,000. $15,000 tentative cash to close. Now go back in and I'm pulling out $4,000 for the buy down. Tentative cash to close is $19,000. Minus my seller help, minus my DAP, the down payment assistance. Now we have 0 cash to close.
So the seller's help is
$8,000. DAP is 11, so now we have 0 cash to close. So no money's left on the table, and they're not bringing any money to the table.
Wow.
Now this particular DAP I'm talking about here is called the CDA DAP. I'm sorry, CDA DAP, CDA program. There are 2 types. You have liens and you have grants. CDA has 2. DSEL offers your buyer $5,000 to work close. Of course, all of these programs, there are income limits and some property restrictions. CDA also has a smart keys for employees. There's a list of employees that partners with CDA and says, well, we will give you, if you as an employer would give your buyer $2,500 to work closing, we'll match that. So now DSEL, they're getting $5,000. With the employer match, they're getting another $5,000 with the smart keys for employees. And CDA also says if your buyer is moving within 10 miles of your, within 10 miles of the employer, then you're giving them another $1,000 to work closing. So that's where we come up with the $11,000 to work closing. Exactly, yeah. Now these here are liens. They are 0 interest liens against the property. And CDA is never forgiven. So if they sell or refinance, they have to pay the money back. But it's still, you know, it's still $11,000 at closing. Then the grants. Now, let me go back before I go into the grants. The difference in the grant and the lien. The liens are not forgiven, and the liens are. This is probably the only program, not probably, but the only program where FHA will allow the buyer to use the DAP, the whole DAP, toward their 3.5%. Everybody else prefers the buyer to put some money into the game. The grants are totally forgiven, and they cannot use that money toward their 3.5. So if they take the MMP 2 or 3 grant, then they have to put their still bring to the table 3.5%. So and basically, it's going to be some money left on the table. The next program is My Home, and it offers 5% of the sale price, owner occupied. First-time home buyers are folks who have not purchased in the last 3 years, who have not had a mortgage in the last 3 years, I should say. 45% debt to income ratio. Most of these programs don't go any higher than 45. I'd say My Home and CDA are the only ones that go to 45. Everybody else is like 43, no higher. But I'd like to pre-approve right at 43, only because as we know, PG has high taxes, so I don't want to get to the 11th hour and, get to the 11th hour and those taxes get pushed up and it takes me from the 43, if I pre-approve them at 45 and it takes me to 46, the deal is done. But, so I like to stay right in the 43 range. The buyer's investment for my home is 1.75% of the sale price. Maximum sale price is $362,790. There are no exceptions. They don't go any higher. Existing, new construction, short sale, and 203K. First-time homebuyer counseling is required, but this one is very important prior to contract sign. Every other program will allow the buyer to go through the counseling after contract or days before, however you want to do it. But this is important to make sure that the certificate is dated prior to the contract date. And there are only 25 approved title companies for my home. So you want to definitely make sure that the title company you're choosing will be able to settle the loan. And all of this is listed on the website. And if you need copies of the list of title companies, I definitely forward that over to you. My Suitland program, they're really trying to get folks into the Suitland area. Foreclosures and short sale properties only for the Buy Suitland. Up to $40,000 and is given for down payment and it's owner occupied only. First time home buyers or people who haven't purchased in the last 3 years. And this is a big question. If we have two buyers and husband purchased, wife has never purchased, that's still considered a first time home buyer transaction. That's always the question that comes up. FHA 203K allowed. 10 census tract, meaning it must be in specific zip codes, 7 zip codes in Suitland. Borrower's investment is $1,000, and this is also a 0% deferred loan, and it is forgiven after 15 years. Work and live in College Park, 10% of the sale price, up to $35,000. Foreclosures only, and specific zip code 20740. $2,000 buyer's investment. Now this particular program, unlike all the others, there's no gift. They want to see the money, at least $2,000 in that account somewhere, First time home buyers are not required on this. And this is also a 0 interest deferred loan or lien. 10% is forgiven after each anniversary year. USDA 100, like VA, 100% financing, no money down. This one can go up to 6% seller help. No mortgage insurance, which is huge. First time home buyers only. The maximum ratio on this one is very different than the other programs. It's 29. Front ratio 29, the back is 41. Whereas everybody else, the high is 45 and 43. They won't go any higher than 41. They just want to make sure that there's a lot of disposable income. Anne Arundel County program offers up to $40,000. FHA, conventional, VA can be used. For Anne Arundel County properties only, first-time home buyers only. There's no, if you ever purchased a home before, you're definitely not eligible for this program. No matter how long ago it had been. 1% minimum buyer investment as existing and new construction, and this lien is never forgiven. It is definitely paid back at time of settlement. I just closed it. This is a great deal. HUD, $100 down. Great deal. HUD real estate owned properties only. So the buyer is actually bringing a check for $100. HUD pays, well, I'll go 203K and 203B are allowed for owner occupied. If they want to go, that's a typo. Investors, that's not a typo, I'm sorry. Investors can only go 203B. So they can't, basically, they don't want the investor to get in there, benefit from $100 down and flip the property, 5-6 months later. HUD supplies the sale contract, so that's, you don't have to worry about creating or filling out the contract. HUD pays the closing costs and your realtor commissions. And it can be used with the Good Neighbor Next Door program. The deal I did close recently combined the $100 down with this Good Neighbor Next Door. This program is only open to officers or teachers, owner occupied only, and it's 50% off the sale price. That's a great deal. It was a great deal. I couldn't believe it myself. Can be used with the $100 down, and the 50% is the second lien, and it is forgiven after 3 years of occupancy. And there cannot be any break in occupancy. They can't move out and come back or rent it out. We also do HPAP up to $40,000. Anybody licensed in DC in here? Okay. Plus the 4% of the sale price for closing costs. FHA, Reno, FHA, conventional are allowed. 0% deferred loan. HPAP enhancement, $77,000, plus the $7,000 toward closing costs. $500 buyer investment, and the specific 4 areas of DC: Anacostia, Ivy City, Deanwood, and Trinidad. 0% deferred loan, and matures after 5 years. So basically, they need to be focused, especially for this program. They need to make sure they are staying credit worthy throughout that 5 years to make sure that they can refinance out. And just talk a little bit about credit worthiness, and we look at, of course, credit scores. Most of these programs require a minimum of, not most, all of them require a minimum of 620 credit scores. We, however, are the only lender who will close a FHA loan at 600. We will do a 600. However, your buyer cannot, is not eligible for the 620. I mean, for the down payment assistance programs. But we do 600. Trade lines, we look at trade lines, at least 3 open trade lines in good standing. Credit scores, we do no non-traditional forms of credit with no scores, not with low scores, with no scores. If there are no scores at all, then I will take non-traditional forms of credit. Anybody not know what that means? Okay. What happens is, if they have no scores, they have no trade lines, or they have maybe 1 trade line and it's not enough to determine what the scores are. So I will ask for 3 bills they pay every single month. A utility bill, I can do a lease agreement, and maybe a car insurance. And I'll take 12 months of that history. In some cases, if there's only 6, I'll take 6 months of that history, send it to all 3 repositories, and build 3 trade lines for them based on those items. So they still don't have any scores, but we're still showing that they're paying. They know how to pay their bills with those 3 utility bills. And FHA is the only program that allows non-traditional forms of credit. Bankruptcies and foreclosures, 2 years for FHA, 3 years for bankruptcies, 2 years for FHA. 2 years for conventional if it's with extenuating circumstances. 4 years for conventional if it's just a mismanagement of funds. For foreclosures, it's 3 years for FHA and 3 years for conventional. Reestablish credit. We want to make sure, let's say somebody's filed bankruptcy back in 05 or let's say 08. We want to, they're obviously meeting the guidelines because they filed more than 3 years ago. I'm sorry, more than 2 years ago. But the underwriter still wants to see that they reestablish themselves credit-wise. Have you opened up credit? What do those trade lines look like? That's very important. If you want to tell your buyers that if you find out that they're not credit-worthy now, how to guide them to get to the point where they're ready to buy in upcoming months. Collections, charge-offs, judgments, tax liens must be paid off. A lot of people, I get this when I teach first-time homebuyer seminars, a lot of people have been told that after 7 years it doesn't count against you. but that's not true. It doesn't affect your scores as bad as it has been. However, let's say if there's for example, if there's a charge-off on your credit, it reads a zero balance because the company's charge it off. But for us, because they could sell that to another agency and attach a lien against the property if we give them a loan if we give them a mortgage loan. So all collections, charge-offs, judgments, and tax liens must be paid off.
Erica, how are deferred student loans handled? Because I just found out recently that if a student loan, I guess the period that it was deferred, if it's now within 12 months of that expiration date of being deferred, that kind of counts against, I guess, your credit worthiness or maybe your debt in terms of, okay,
it's factored in.
It is.
The rule of thumb is the student loan must be deferred 12 months from settlement, the settlement date.
Okay.
So we don't factor any debt in, any student loan debt, as long as it's a whole year from that settlement date. And if they're close, then have them call and see if they can push it out.
Okay.
That is possible. It doesn't happen often. I'm just saying I have had one or two where they called and were able to push it out.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Lender letters, when as far as pre-approval letters, we look at obviously your intake sheet, your basic information, or an application that I would take face to face or via phone, and also look at the credit review. However, I like to go one step further, only because not only do I look at all this information, but my pre-approval is based on looking at assets and income, actually putting my eyes on that tax return to make sure they're making what they say they make. I know you guys have been in the business long enough to know that the buyer might say they make $50,000, but then by the time I get pay stubs and they have child support taken out, and this and that taken out, and car notes taken out, and then now on paper they make $35,000, where I just pre-approved them at 50. Now we have 35. Now you already have a house in mind, contract all ready to go. They don't make enough money. So that's why it's so important. I think it's so important to make sure that pre-approval letter comes out to you with me looking at all of the income docs. Now, much like I think I did with your client, Gladys, I'll send the approval. I've looked at all this information. If I have not gotten, only so you know, he's credit worthy.
Okay.
And I won't send the letter out to you or to the buyer until I've looked at these items. But I will send an email to you and to the buyer. Yes, congratulations, you approved at this amount. Once I receive your documents, I can release your pre-approval letter. And that just safeguards, again, like if you have a self-employed borrower, and on paper, on taxes, they make $80,000, but they wrote off 40. So I can't pre-approve them at 80. I have to pre-approve them at $40,000. So those are the big reasons why you definitely want to have your loan officer put their eyes on those documents before you send that letter. Important things to remember as far as underwriting time. Know that these first-time home buyer programs, there are layers of underwriting. We underwrite it, and then it goes to the second lien holder. In some cases, my home or by Suitland. So I just want everybody to be cognizant of making sure that contract date, when you use these first-time home buyer programs, your contract date's about 45, 60 days, just to make sure that everybody each lender has a chance to make sure they're underwriting time. Make sure they have enough time for underwriting. Debt to income ratios, again, 43 to 45. And know that when you're changing, or understand when we're changing from programs, say we want to go with, let's say, My Home, and then we find out that we'd rather not go with My Home, we want to go with CDA, know that the price of the house that they qualify for may change based on those ratios. So just know that that's a conversation that I'll definitely have with you. Cash to close. We'd like to see, even though there's no reserves anymore, lenders like to see that there's some money left in their account after they pay their bills. There's some disposable income. And that's all I have today, unless you guys have any questions.
Can we find all of that information on your website? Because I was trying to take notes as we were going through.
I can send it to you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you know what? I can send it to you. I don't have it on. Wells Fargo doesn't allow it. They're very strict about what we can put on our website.
Oh, okay.
But I could definitely send it out to you. And like I said, we have the FHA program that we have where we can use. Where we have allowed buyers to buy at 600 credit scores. The only difference with that particular program is that right now FHA allows up to 6% seller assistance. We only allow 3%. That's our only overlay. Because if we're going as low as 600, we want to see that there's some skin in the game for the buyer. Qualifying ratios are 31-33, whereas the FHA regularly I can get a 45 through. In some cases I've gotten a 49 through, and that's with some compensating factors. And that's it.
Did you say CDA you had to take a class or just my home?
All of them. I'm sorry, I did not mention that. All of the programs require the certificate, first time home buyer certificate. And what I do is once I've pre-approved one of your buyers, I send them the list of all the nonprofit agencies in the state of Maryland. So they let them choose, and I immediately get them working on that. So we don't wait till the 11th hour and scramble and try to get them into class. Most of the classes, and you can tell your buyers, most of the classes are free. However, what I'm finding is some of these nonprofits are charging. But what I suggest, if there are enough out there that are free, I suggest following those that are free. Because there are a lot of them that are.
And how long is the class?
The class, it varies. It's typically like 8 hours, but some of them have 4-hour sessions. And when I say 8, they're not there all day. It may be a session with a counselor for an hour here and another hour, and then a 4-hour class on a Saturday, something like that.
Now, with the CDA program, I know with my home, the owner has to live in the house 10 years in order to be forgiven for the grant or lien. But with CDA, is it that same stipulation where they have to?
CDA is never forgiven. They want them
never forgiven. Oh, okay.
But I mean,
so like you said, if they sell or
refinance,
they have to pay that money back.
Right. And I folks aren't happy about it, that CDA is not forgiven. However, think about it, a lot of these agencies run out of money. CDA has never run out of money, and that's the reason why. They're still steadily replenishing their money. And so that's just the way I sell it to buyers.
You know, I have a client that I know for sure that she wants to move back to England within like the next 4 or 5 years. So that's why I've been staying away from like my home for and
I would stay away from like all of the programs.
Okay.
1 or 2 we allow 3 years, but I would definitely stay away from the programs.
Okay.
Is she looking to sell it, or when she moves?
When she moves, she right now she's not sure what she's going to do.
Okay.
Because she does have a daughter and a son-in-law that are here in Maryland.
Okay.
So when she moves back to England, she's not sure whether or not. I guess depending on what the market is at the time.
Right.
Where she may want to rent it, but I know with my home, you know, she wouldn't even have that option of renting it.
Right.
She would have to, you know, that would have to be her primary residence.
Exactly.
But with CDA, if she decided to move back to England and rent it, would that?
No, not at all. Wouldn't affect her at all.
It wouldn't affect her. Oh,
not
okay.
at all. Thank you, ladies, for allowing me to hang out with you today. These are your business cards for you guys.
You ordered yours?
Yeah, I need to order some more because I
I'm crossing out.
Yeah, I know.
Erica, here's my email address hasn't
Okay.
changed.
Okay.
But, my direct number has.
Okay, perfect.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Here, but I still had this and that's what I did.